Welcome back to Teen Romance Library, where powerful alphas fall hard, and the women they underestimate change everything. Every story here is complete, immersive, and emotion-driven. No cliffhangers, no rushed endings, just full romances you can sink into. So if you love possessive alphas, strong heroines who don't beg, slow burn tension, emotional payoffs, and stories that actually finish, you're in the right place. I need you to join the pack right now by subscribing, leave a like if you enjoy immersive romance, and settle in because once the story begins, we don't stop until the ending. Now, let's get into it. I didn't know the moment I touched that manuscript. Something ancient touched back. Let me tell you how it started, not with fanfare or destiny written in the stars, but with dust, mountains of it. The kind that settles in your lungs and makes you cough like you're dying, right there in the belly of the Royal Archives at 2 a.m. when any sane person would be asleep. But I've never been accused of being sane. The manuscript was tucked between tax records from 1847 and a collection of failed marriage proposals to some long-dead duchess. Someone had filed it wrong, or maybe hidden it on purpose. The leather binding was cracked like drought-parched earth, and when I opened it, the pages whispered. Actually whispered. I know how that sounds. I'm a historian. For God's sake. I deal in facts, in carbon dating and cross-referencing sources. But I'm telling you, those pages whispered my name. The text was poetry. Ancient verse written in a dialect so old it predated the kingdom itself. Most scholars would have logged it, tagged it, and moved on. But I've always had this thing, this annoying, relentless thing where I can't let mysteries lie. And hidden in those verses, disguised as romantic metaphor, were coordinates. Longitude and latitude woven into stanzas about moonlight and eternal waiting. The forgotten king. Everyone said he was a myth, a cautionary tale mothers told their children about pride and isolation. A legend invented to explain the ruins up north, those crumbling stone towers that jutted from the mountains like broken teeth. No one believed he was real. But I did. And here's the thing no one tells you about obsession. It doesn't feel like madness when you're inside it. It feels like purpose. Like every single choice you've made in your entire life has been leading you to this one moment, this one discovery. My hands shook as I traced those coordinates. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. That's when I felt it. The sensation of being watched. Not by the elderly night guard who made his rounds every hour, keys jangling like Christmas bells. Not by the marble busts of dead kings lining the walls, their stone eyes forever fixed on nothing. This was different. This felt alive, present, like standing at the edge of a cliff and knowing that something vast and unknowable is waiting in the dark below. I spun around. Nothing. Just shadows playing tricks in the lamplight. Just the normal creaks and sighs of an old building settling into sleep. But my skin prickled with awareness, with recognition. Something had noticed me noticing it. I should have been afraid. Any rational person would have closed that book, walked away, maybe taken a few personal days to reevaluate their life choices. Instead, I felt chosen, like I'd been wandering through a fog my entire life, and someone had finally called my name. By morning, I had the coordinates memorized. By noon, I'd presented my findings to the Royal Historical Society. They laughed. Dr. Werner actually laughed this full-bellied, condescending chuckle that made his ridiculous mustache bounce. "Miss Thorne," he said, using that tone people use when they're about to pat you on the head like a confused child. "The Forgotten King is folklore, a romantic fantasy. Surely you don't intend to waste university resources chasing fairy tales." The others nodded. 12 scholars in expensive suits, sitting in judgment like I was proposing we fund an expedition to find Atlantis or prove the moon was made of cheese. I looked at each of them, really looked, and I realized something that made my decision crystal clear. These people had forgotten what it meant to wonder. They'd traded curiosity for comfort, discovery for departmental politics. They'd rather be right than know the truth. So I smiled. Not a defeated smile. Not an apologetic one. a smile that said, "I see exactly who you are, and I'm done asking for your permission." "Thank you for your time, gentlemen," I said, gathering my materials with steady hands. "I'll be sure to send a postcard from the ruins." Dr. Werner's face went purple. "Miss Thorne, if you pursue this foolishness, the university will not—" "I know," I interrupted, still smiling. "I'll see myself out." The door closed behind me with a satisfying click, sealing off their protests, their warnings, their small, frightened certainty. I was free, and I had coordinates burning in my mind like a brand. The pull started that night. A physical sensation in my chest, right behind my sternum, like a compass needle swinging north. I'd read about this in folklore, the call of fated places, of destiny pulling at your bones. I'd always dismissed it as metaphor. I wasn't dismissing it anymore. The train north took 14 hours, then a wagon through villages that got smaller and more suspicious the higher we climbed. The locals watched me with dark eyes, crossing themselves when they thought I wasn't looking. One old woman grabbed my wrist at a coaching inn, her fingers strong as iron. "Turn back," she hissed. "The mountains remember. The mountains wait." I thanked her politely and kept going. Marcus, my guide, was a local hunter who needed the money more than he feared the mountains, or so he claimed. But I saw how his hand kept drifting to the rifle on his back, how his eyes scanned the tree line like he expected something to come crashing through. "You really believe in him?" he asked on the third day, as we climbed a path so narrow we had to go single file. "The Forgotten King?" "I believe in evidence," I replied, pulling myself over a boulder. "And the evidence says something or someone built those ruins. Someone powerful enough that their story survived 1,000 years, even as myth. Maybe myths are warnings, not invitations." I laughed, breathless from the altitude. "Well, if I die up here, at least I'll make an excellent footnote in someone else's dissertation." Marcus didn't laugh. That's when the wind started. Not a normal mountain wind, this was something else. It moved through the pines like a living thing, like breath, like a howl shaped into syllables I almost understood. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in as many seconds. My exhale came out as fog, and somewhere in that wind, I swear I heard it. A wolf's call. Long, mournful, hungry. Marcus froze, his face gone white. "We need to turn back, now." But that pull in my chest had become an ache, an urgency, a certainty that if I turned around now, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. "No," I whispered, surprised by the steel in my own voice. "We're close. I can feel it." And I could. God help me. I could feel him. Waiting. Marcus refused to go further. I don't blame him. The path had narrowed to nothing, just sheer cliff face on one side and a drop into white oblivion on the other. The wind screamed warnings in a language older than words, but that pull in my chest had become a rope, dragging me forward with such force I thought my ribs might crack. "Miss Thorne, please." His voice shook. Not from cold, from something primal. My grandfather told stories about the king who loved too much, who claimed too much, who was cursed for it. "Then stay here," I said, not unkindly. "I'll come back before dark." "You won't." He said it with such certainty that I stopped, turned. His eyes were wet. "No one who goes to him comes back. Not unchanged, not human." I should have asked what he meant, should have demanded answers. Instead, I pressed half my remaining money into his shaking hands and kept climbing. The ice ended exactly where it shouldn't. One moment I was pulling myself over a ridge, my breath coming in ragged gasps, my fingers numb even through my gloves. The next, I was staring at an impossibility. A valley, hidden in the palm of the mountain like a secret the stone had kept for centuries. Where there should have been snow and rock, there was grass. Actual grass, green as emeralds, swaying in a breeze that felt like spring. And rising from the center of this impossible place towers. 7 of them, slender and graceful, made of some dark stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They spiraled upward like frozen music, like someone had captured a symphony in architecture. Bridges connected them, delicate arcs of the same dark stone, spanning distances that should have been impossible without modern engineering. I dropped to my knees, not from exhaustion, from recognition. My heart knew this place. Knew it the way you know your childhood home in dreams, the way you know a lover's touch in darkness. I'd never been here, never seen anything like this in any historical record or archaeological survey. And yet every cell in my body was screaming home, home, home. Tears froze on my cheeks. I didn't remember starting to cry. The towers weren't ruins. That was the second impossibility. They should have been crumbling, eroded by 1,000 years of weather and neglect. Instead, they stood perfect and whole, as if their builders had walked away yesterday, as if they were waiting. The sun was setting, painting the valley in shades of amber and rose. The grass whispered secrets, and from somewhere deep in that palace of impossible towers, I felt it again, that presence, that vast, patient awareness, watching me, knowing me. I stood on shaking legs and walked toward the palace like a woman walking toward her execution or her wedding, I couldn't tell which. The bronze gates were 30 feet high, covered in relief carvings so intricate I could have spent years studying them. Wolves running, battles fought beneath full moons, and at the center, a figure crowned, powerful, alone. One hand raised toward the sky, the other pressed over his heart. I touched the gate, just my fingertips against the cold bronze. It opened. No creak, no resistance. It swung inward, smooth and silent, like it had been oiled that morning, like it had been waiting for precisely this touch, this moment, this woman stupid and stubborn enough to climb a mountain chasing legends. Warm air breathed out. I'm not being poetic. The air that flowed from that palace was warm. It carried scents that had no business existing at this altitude, in this cold jasmine and cedar, old paper and older magic. It wrapped around me like an embrace, like an invitation, like a claiming. Every survival instinct I possessed was screaming at me to run. I stepped inside. The entrance hall stole my breath. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, held up by columns carved to look like trees' bark, and branches rendered in stone with such skill I expected to see leaves sprouting. Moonlight poured through windows of crystal so pure it seemed liquid, painting everything in silver. And there were flowers. Impossible, beautiful, blooming flowers. They grew from cracks in the floor, climbed the columns, spilled from alcoves in waterfalls of color. Midnight roses, their petals the deep purple of bruises. White lilies that glowed like captured stars. Flowers I had no names for, in shades that shouldn't exist in nature, blues that hurt to look at, reds so deep they were almost black. I walked forward in a daze, my footsteps echoing in the vast silence. The flowers turned as I passed. Actually turned, their blooms following my movement like faces tracking the sun. My hands shook. I pressed them against my stomach, trying to hold something inside that wanted to break free fear or wonder or recognition. I couldn't tell. The hallway opened into a throne room. I stopped breathing. It was a cathedral of winter and waiting. The walls were the same dark stone, but here they'd been inlaid with something that caught the light veins of silver and crystal that pulsed with a rhythm like a heartbeat. More flowers bloomed here, defiant and lush, creating a garden around the base of 7 steps leading up to a throne carved from a single piece of black stone. And on that throne sat a man. No, not a man, a king. He was frozen. I could see the thin sheen of ice coating his skin, see the frost that rimed his dark hair. But even in stillness, even locked in whatever curse or magic had claimed him, his power was undeniable. He was massive. The kind of build that spoke of violence and strength, broad shoulders straining against a shirt of deep blue, arms that could crush or hold with equal ease. His hands gripped the arms of the throne, and even frozen I could see the tension in them, knuckles white, tendons standing out, like he'd been fighting when the ice took him, like he was still fighting. His face made my heart stop. Sharp features, high cheekbones, a jaw that could have been carved by a sculptor with a grudge against softness. full lips pressed into a line that spoke of control and fury and terrible, aching loneliness. His hair was black as midnight, falling to his shoulders in waves that should have looked soft but instead looked wild, barely contained. But it was his expression that destroyed me, even in ice, even frozen for God knows how long. His face held such longing, such desperate, naked need. His eyes frozen wide, the color of them lost beneath the ice, were fixed on the doorway, on the exact spot where I stood, like he'd been waiting, like he'd known someone would come, like he'd been waiting for me. My knees went weak. I grabbed a column for support, flowers brushing against my hand. They were warm, alive, impossibly real in this place of frozen time. "This is not a corpse," I whispered to the empty room. My voice echoed, multiplied, came back to me from a dozen directions. "This is a king, un alpha." The word rose unbidden in my mind, and with it came knowledge I shouldn't possess. This man, this frozen, powerful, devastating man, had been more than human. The legends hadn't lied about that. He'd been a shifter, an alpha so powerful he'd ruled not through cruelty but through sheer presence, through a will that could bend the world. And someone or something had locked him here, in ice, in sleep, in punishment or protection, I didn't know. I should have run. Should have grabbed my cameras, my documentation tools, treated this like the archaeological find of the century. Instead, I found myself walking forward. One step, another. The flowers parted for me, creating a path through their bloom. My heart hammered so hard I tasted copper. 7 steps up to the throne. I took them slowly, like approaching an altar, like approaching something sacred and profane, all at once. Up close, I could see details the distance had hidden. Scars on his hands, dozens of them, the mark of a warrior, a chain around his neck holding something beneath his shirt, the precise fold of his collar, the way his chest didn't move, no breath, no life, just frozen stillness. But I could feel him. Power radiated from his frozen form like heat from a forge. It pressed against my skin, invaded my lungs, made my blood sing with something that felt dangerously like recognition, like my body knew his, like we'd touched before, in dreams or past lives or futures not yet written. I reached out, stopped, my hand hovering inches from his face. "Who did this to you?" I whispered. "And why do I feel like I've been looking for you my entire life?" The ice beneath my feet pulsed, once, twice, like a heartbeat. The flowers around the throne burst into bloom, dozens of them, hundreds, their perfume so thick and sweet I swayed. The temperature in the room spiked, then dropped, then spiked again, like the palace itself was breathing. My fingers touched his cheek. The ice was warm. That's impossible. Ice can't be warm. But beneath my trembling fingertips, the frost coating his skin felt like fever, like fire banked and waiting. I snatched my hand back, but it was too late. A crack split the silence. Thin as a hair, running from where I'd touched his face down along his jaw. The ice around his chest fractured tiny fault lines, spreading like lightning across stone. "Oh God," I breathed, stumbling backward. "What did I—" His eyes opened, and they were gold. Molten, burning, ancient gold, fixed on me with an intensity that sent me crashing to my knees, not from fear. From the sheer weight of that gaze, like being seen for the first time in my life, truly seen, stripped bare and known and claimed. The ice shattered. The sound was catastrophic. Ice didn't just crack, it detonated. Shards exploded outward like shrapnel, and I threw my arms over my face as fragments whistled past, embedding themselves in stone columns, shredding flower petals into confetti of color and scent. The entire throne room shook. Dust rained from the vaulted ceiling. Somewhere deep in the palace, something enormous groaned the sound of a structure remembering how to breathe. And through it all, those eyes never left mine. Gold, burning, alive. He moved, and the world tilted. One moment frozen on a throne, the next on his feet with a speed that shouldn't be possible, not after centuries of stillness, not for anything human. He stood 7 feet of coiled muscle, and barely restrained violence, his chest heaving with his first breaths in God knows how long. The air around him shimmered, heat and power rolling off him in waves that made the flowers bend and the remaining ice on the floor steam into nothing. This close, and he was close. He'd moved closer without seeming to move at all. I could smell him. Cedar and smoke and something wild. Something that made the base of my spine tingle with warning and want in equal measure. His hand shot out. I flinched. Couldn't help it. That hand could crush my skull without effort, could tear me apart before I could scream. It stopped, inches from my face, trembling. Those gold eyes tracked the movement, my flinch, my fear. Something that might have been pain flickered across his face. His jaw clenched so hard I heard his teeth grind. Slowly, deliberately, he pulled his hand back and pressed it against his own chest, right over his heart, like he was holding something in, or holding himself back. "Forgive me." His voice shattered what remained of my composure. Deep, rough as gravel, like he'd swallowed broken glass and somehow made it beautiful. The kind of voice that vibrated in your bones, that made you want to either run or get closer, and I couldn't tell which impulse was stronger. "I have forgotten. Gentleness." He spoke like someone from another time, formal, precise, each word chosen with care. I tried to stand. My legs had other ideas. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving me shaking and useless on the cold floor. You were the ice. I didn't mean to." "You freed me." He took a step back, then another, giving me space even though everything in his posture screamed that he wanted to do the opposite. His hands flexed at his sides, and I saw claws, actual claws, slide out from beneath his fingernails before he forced them back with visible effort. 317 years, 4 months, and 13 days. I have counted every one. The precision of it hit me like a fist to the stomach. "You were awake the whole time?" His laugh was bitter and sharp enough to draw blood. "Aware, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to shift, trapped in this form," he gestured to himself with something like disgust, while I felt every second crawl past. Every day, every year, every decade. Oh God, the horror of it crashed over me. To be locked in your own body, conscious and helpless, for over 3 centuries. I couldn't fathom it, couldn't wrap my mind around that kind of torture without going mad. How did you not go insane?" Another step back. He was pacing now, restless energy barely contained, like a caged wolf finally freed but still remembering the bars. "Who says I haven't? Who says the thing standing before you is anything more than madness wearing a king's face?" But his eyes weren't mad. They were sharp, calculating, taking in every detail of me with an intensity that made me feel naked despite being fully clothed. He assessed me like a threat and a treasure simultaneously lingering on my face, my hands, the rapid pulse beating at my throat. "What are you?" I whispered. He stopped pacing, turned to face me fully, and the weight of his attention was a physical thing, pressing against my chest, making it hard to breathe. "I am Kale." He said it like a confession, like a warning. "Son of Aldrich, last of the Northern Alphas, king of a kingdom that no longer exists, ruler of a people long dead." His hands curled into fists. "And you, little scholar, with your brave, foolish heart, you should not be here." "The forgotten king," I breathed. "You're real. The legends are real. The legends are lies wrapped in truth, designed to keep people like you away." He moved again, not toward me, but between me and the entrance. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. Protective, or possessive. "This place is cursed. I am cursed. And whatever brought you to my threshold is not mercy, it is cruelty wearing hope's mask." I pushed myself to my feet, using a column for support. My legs were still shaking, but I'd be damned if I'd have this conversation from the floor like a supplicant. I came because I found coordinates in an ancient manuscript. Because I'm a historian and this is the archaeological discovery of a lifetime. Because you felt something. He cut through my rational explanations like they were smoke. Those gold eyes pinned me, saw through me. A pull. Here." He pressed his fist against his sternum. "Like a hook in your ribs, dragging you north. Like hunger, like need, like recognition." My mouth went dry. "How did you—" "Because I felt you coming." His voice dropped to something barely above a growl. "For 3 months. Your approach like thunder in my frozen veins. Getting closer, stronger, until tonight when you touched that gate and every ward, every protection, every last defense this palace possessed simply opened for you." The implication hung in the air between us, too massive to acknowledge. "That's impossible," I said weakly. "Impossible." He laughed again, and this time there was something almost fond in it. "You stand in a palace that should not exist, before a man who has not drawn breath in over 3 centuries, surrounded by flowers that bloom in eternal winter, and you speak to me of impossible?" He had a point. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly freezing despite the warm air. "The curse. What happened to you?" His expression shuddered. The openness, if you could call that intensity open, vanished behind walls built over centuries. "That is a story written in blood and betrayal, not fit for—" "Tell me." I don't know where I found the courage. Maybe I'd used up all my fear. Maybe his pain was calling to something in me I didn't understand. "Please, you've been alone for 300 years. Let someone finally hear you." He stared at me. And in his eyes, I saw the war between the king who trusted no one, and the man who had been desperately, achingly alone for longer than I could comprehend. The man won. "I loved her." The words came out rough, reluctant, like pulling arrows from a wound. "Celine. She was human, a scholar like you." His gaze raked over me again, and I felt it like a touch, curious and brave and absolutely convinced she could bridge the gap between our worlds. I said nothing, waited, my heart breaking for what I knew was coming. My pack elders warned me. Human mates are forbidden for alphas, too fragile, too short-lived, too likely to cause chaos in the hierarchy. His jaw worked. I did not care. I claimed her anyway, bound myself to her with every ritual, every vow our people possessed. And for 3 years, I thought love was enough. The flowers around us seemed to droop, responding to the weight of his grief. "It wasn't her fault." He said it quickly, fiercely. "The bond, it was killing her. Slowly. A human body cannot sustain an alpha's claim. The magic burns too hot, demands too much. She was dying, and I was too proud, too desperate to see it until—" He stopped, closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were molten with old rage. "She begged a witch to break the bond, to set her free. The witch agreed for a price. My kingdom, my power, my pack." His voice turned to gravel. "The curse was specific. I would remain in human form, unable to shift, unable to age, unable to die, conscious, aware, trapped in this palace while everyone I loved fell to ash, until someone with a heart brave enough and foolish enough to love the monster I'd become could break the spell." The cruelty of it stole my breath. 300 years, I whispered. Waiting for someone who would never come. He turned away from me, shoulders rigid. Because who could love this? A king of nothing, a wolf who cannot run, a man who destroyed everything he touched? I moved before thinking. 3 steps brought me close enough to feel his heat, smell the wild scent of him, close enough to be dangerous. "You're wrong." He went absolutely still. "You didn't destroy anything," I continued, my voice shaking but sure. "You loved, completely, desperately, the way alphas love with everything you are. And maybe it was too much for the world to handle, but that doesn't make it wrong. It makes it real." He turned, and the look on his face was devastation and hope warring for dominance. "You don't know what you're saying," he rasped. "You don't know what I am, what I could do to— I know you've been protecting me since I walked through that door." I gestured to where he stood, positioned between me and every exit, every window, every potential threat. "I know you pulled back when I flinched, even though every instinct you have was screaming to touch me. I know you've been alone for 3 centuries, and you're still capable of gentleness." His hands trembled. "Little scholar, my name is Ilara. He said it like a prayer, like a curse, like a name he'd been waiting his whole life to speak. You should run from me. Probably, I agreed. My heart was hammering. My skin felt too tight. Every rational thought I possessed was screaming warnings I couldn't hear over the roaring in my blood. But I spent my whole life searching for something I couldn't name. And I took a breath. I think I finally found it. The last of his control shattered in his eyes. He didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at me like I'd stabbed him, and he couldn't decide whether to bleed or thank me for it. Then, slow as dawn, gentle as snowfall, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers barely grazed my skin, but I felt that touch everywhere. In my lungs, in my bones, in places I didn't have names for. "Alara," he murmured, and his voice was wrecked. "What have you done?" I didn't have an answer, didn't trust myself to speak. Because the truth was I didn't know what I'd done, only that standing here, in this impossible palace with this impossible man, felt more right than anything in my entire carefully planned, thoroughly researched life. The moment stretched, trembled, almost broke into something neither of us were ready for. Then Cale stepped back, and I felt the loss of his warmth like winter rushing in. "You must be exhausted," he said, his voice carefully controlled again. "Back to the king, back to distance. The climb, the shock. You need rest." He was right. I was running on adrenaline and wonder and something dangerously close to obsession. My body was starting to remember it had limits. "There are chambers," he continued, already moving toward a corridor I hadn't noticed. "The east wing is intact. Clean. The magic preserved everything. Linens, water, even—" He stopped, turned back to me with something almost like embarrassment. "Even food, though I cannot promise it will taste as it should after 3 centuries. I followed because what else was I going to do? Leave? Return to a world that suddenly felt flat and colorless compared to this? The palace came alive as we walked. Lights flickered on not electric. Something older, some kind of luminescence in the crystal veins running through the walls. The flowers turned their blooms to track our movement, and I realized they weren't just responding to me. They were responding to him, to their king, finally moving through halls that had been silent for so long. He gave me the most beautiful room I'd ever seen. Windows overlooking the impossible valley. A bed large enough to sleep 4, covered in furs that should have been rotted to nothing but instead looked freshly brushed. A desk, shelves lined with books I was itching to examine, and flowers, always flowers, growing in arrangements that seemed both wild and intentional. "The bath draws from a hot spring beneath the palace," Cale said from the doorway, not entering, keeping that careful distance. "Towels in the cabinet. If you need anything—" He hesitated. "I will be near. Where will you?" "I have not slept in 300 years, Alara. I don't think I remember how." A flash of something raw crossed his face. "Besides, I have too much to do. Too much lost time to reclaim. Too much—" His eyes found mine, held. "Too much to protect." He left before I could ask what he meant. I didn't sleep either. How could I? Instead, I bathed in water that smelled like minerals and magic, changed into a shift I found in the wardrobe, soft as silk, clearly made for someone else. Someone long dead, and spent the hours until dawn cataloging everything I could see from my window. The valley, the towers, the way moonlight turned everything silver and strange. The way I could feel him moving through the palace below. A presence, a pull, a thread connecting us that I didn't understand and couldn't ignore. When dawn finally broke, I found him in what must have been a library. 3 stories of books spiraling around a central atrium where a tree grew, an actual tree, its branches spreading across the ceiling, its roots breaking through marble floors. The scent of old paper and living wood mixed into something that made my scholar's heart sing. Cale was surrounded by chaos. Books piled everywhere. Scrolls unrolled across tables. Maps pinned to walls with what looked like bone needles. He'd changed clothes, still that deep blue, but simpler now. Sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and those same warrior scars I'd noticed before. He looked up when I entered, and something in his face eased. "You slept," he said. "It wasn't a question." "You didn't," I countered. Old habits. He gestured to the disaster around him. I've been trying to understand what remains of the curse. The witch's magic was thorough, layers upon layers of it, woven through every stone of this place. But your touch broke the first seal, which means there are more. My historian's mind caught up quickly. The curse has stages. Exactly. He pushed a hand through his hair, and I noticed how it fell wild and uncombed, like he'd been running his fingers through it for hours. I can move now, speak, but I still cannot shift, cannot access the full extent of my power. The palace remains trapped outside time, and the wards, he frowned, they're weakening, which means others will be able to find this place. Soon. The implication settled cold in my stomach. Others like what? Like the things that hunger for alpha magic. Like treasure hunters and dark practitioners who would love to bind a powerless alpha king. His jaw tightened. Like anyone who might want to hurt you to control me. There it was again. That fierce protectiveness threading through his words. Then we work together, I said simply. You know the magic. I know research. Between us, you want to stay, he said it carefully, watching me. Here, with me. Did you think I'd leave? I moved into the library properly, running my fingers along book spines. I just found the archaeological discovery of a millennium, a living link to pre-kingdom civilization, a curse that defies everything we know about magical theory. Plus, I glanced at him, you need help, and I'm very good at what I do. Something that might have been relief flickered across his face. You're also very stubborn, says the man who counted 300 years. He almost smiled. Fair. We fell into a rhythm over the following days. Mornings in the library, cross-referencing his memories with ancient texts. I'd read passages aloud, my modern understanding of linguistics helping decode dialects he'd half forgotten. He'd pace, always pacing, that restless energy never quite contained, and fill in context, history, the living knowledge that no book could capture. Afternoons we spent restoring rooms. The palace was vast, and much of it had fallen into disrepair despite the preservation magic. We worked side by side, and I learned things about Kale that no legend had ever mentioned. He was funny, not obviously, not in a way you'd notice if you weren't paying attention. But there was a dry wit buried under all that intensity, a sharp intelligence that caught me off guard and made me laugh when I least expected it. No, he said, staring at my tape measure like it had personally offended him. That cannot be correct. This room is 43 paces wide. I have walked it 1,000 times. Your paces, maybe. I held up the tape. But in meters. He pronounced it like a curse. In my time, we measured in proper units. Feet, hands, the span of a man's stride. How medieval of you. I am literally medieval, Elara. I grinned. Fair point. He caught me smiling, and something in his expression softened. You mock me. I'm delighting in you, I corrected. There's a difference. His eyes darkened. Dangerous words, little scholar. But he moved closer as he said it, and my breath caught. These moments kept happening, accidental touches as we passed books. His hand at the small of my back when we navigated dark corridors, steady and warm and always there. The way his gaze would linger when he thought I wasn't looking on my face, my hands, the curve of my neck, the way mine lingered right back. I was falling, slowly, inevitably, like a stone dropped into deep water, no splash. Just a gradual descent into something I couldn't name and didn't want to fight. And I think he knew. The first crack in his careful control came on the 5th day. I'd mentioned Marcus. Casual. Innocent. Just explaining how I'd hired a guide. How he'd been too afraid to continue. Nothing meaningful. Kale went absolutely still. This guide. His voice was too quiet. Too controlled. He was alone with you? In the mountains? Well, yes, but for how long? I blinked. 3 days. Why does it? Then I saw his face, saw the tension in his jaw, the way his hands had curled into fists, the dangerous gold bleeding into his eyes. Are you seriously jealous right now? No. He bit the word off. You're a terrible liar for someone 300 years old. I am not. He stopped, exhaled hard through his nose. He could have hurt you, taken advantage. You were alone, vulnerable. I was paying him, and he was terrified. And I stepped closer, fascinated despite myself. Why do you care? Wrong question. Or exactly the right one, depending on your perspective. Cale closed the distance between us in one fluid movement, not touching, but close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes, close enough to feel the heat rolling off him, to smell cedar and smoke and wild things. Because you're mine to protect, he growled, and there was wolf in his voice now, something primal bleeding through. The moment you set foot in my palace, the moment you touched me and broke that seal, you became mine. And the thought of anyone else near you, touching you, threatening you. He cut himself off, stepped back like I'd burned him. I apologize, he said, rigid with control. That was inappropriate. The alpha in me is the curse kept that part caged for so long, and now it's... He dragged a hand through his hair. You're not mine. You're not anyone's. I have no right. What if I want you to have the right? The words escaped before I could stop them, hung in the air like confession or challenge or both. Cale stared at me, and for the first time since I'd freed him, he looked completely, utterly lost. Alara, he whispered, you don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, come with me. He led me to a tower I hadn't explored yet, higher than the others, accessible only by a narrow staircase that spiraled up and up until my thighs burned. At the top, a room. Simple, sparse. A window overlooking the valley. A bed, unused. And on one wall a portrait. She was beautiful. Dark hair, fair skin, delicate features. She wore green and smiled like she had secrets. Morgana, I said softly. Celine. His voice was hollow. Morgana was the witch. Celine was... He stopped in front of the portrait. She was everything. Light and laughter and curiosity. She asked 1,000 questions, challenged everything, believed the world could be better than it was. His hand lifted, almost touching the painted canvas. She was so much like you, it makes my chest ache. Jealousy should have stabbed through me. Instead, I felt only sadness. What happened to her? The bond was killing her, slowly. She grew pale, weak, couldn't keep food down. I took her to healers, witches, shamans, anyone who might help. They all said the same thing. Human bodies aren't meant to sustain an alpha's claim. The magic is too much, too demanding. It burns them from the inside. He turned away from the portrait. She never told me she'd gone to Morgana. Never told me what price the witch had asked. I only found out after when Celine appeared one morning, healthy and whole and free of the bond. Free of me. The curse was payment. Morgana wanted my power, my kingdom, my pack. She got all three. And Celine... His voice cracked. Celine lived, married a merchant, had children, died of old age 70, 3 years into my imprisonment while I watched through windows I couldn't break. Oh God, the torture of it. To see the woman you loved live and die and never age yourself, never move, never even close your eyes. I moved without thinking, crossed to him, took his face in my hands, this devastating, broken king who'd survived 3 centuries of hell and was still somehow standing. His eyes closed at my touch. A shudder ran through him. You should hate me, he whispered against my palms. I destroyed everything. My pack, my kingdom, the woman I loved. I am the cautionary tale, Alara. The warning about what happens when alphas love too much, claim too hard, refuse to let go. Is that what you think? I searched his face. That love is what cursed you, isn't it? No, I said it fiercely. Pride cursed you. The witch cursed you. A world that couldn't make room for something extraordinary cursed you. But love? Love is the only thing that kept you sane. That kept you counting days instead of surrendering to madness. that made you capable of gentleness with a stranger even after centuries alone. He opened his eyes, gold and aching and desperate. I'm falling for you, I admitted, reckless, stupid, true. I know it's too fast, too intense, probably too much like what happened before. But I can't. I don't want to fight it. And I need you to know that before we go any further, before we break any more seals, I'm choosing this, choosing you, not because of destiny or curses or magic, because you make me feel alive. Elara, I know the risks. I know what happened to her. I know I'm human and fragile, and you could break me without meaning to. My thumbs brushed his cheekbones, but I'm also a grown woman who's made it her life's work to chase impossible things. And you're the most impossible thing I've ever found. His control finally shattered. He kissed me like a man drowning. Hard, desperate. His hands cupping my face like I was something precious and fragile that he was terrified of breaking but couldn't bear to release. His mouth moved against mine with centuries of hunger and restraint finally unleashed, and I felt it the wolf beneath his skin, pacing, growling, claiming. I kissed him back just as fiercely, my hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer even though there was no space left between us. He tasted like winter and want, and something wild I had no name for. When his tongue swept against mine, I gasped, and he swallowed the sound like he could consume every part of me. The flowers around us exploded into bloom. I heard it, petals unfurling, stems cracking with growth, the air suddenly thick with perfume and magic. Kale pulled back with a curse, his forehead pressed to mine, his breathing ragged. Elara, if we don't stop, I won't be able to. The alpha in me wants. I know what he wants, I breathed against his mouth. Later, when we've broken this curse, when you're whole again. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I'm not going anywhere. He looked at me like I'd performed a miracle. You're terrifying, little scholar. Absolutely terrifying. Good. But reality crept back in. The curse. The trials. The fact that we'd broken one seal and had no idea how many remained. We found out the next morning. The palace woke us, or woke me, since Kale still didn't sleep with a sound like a heartbeat, deep, rhythmic, coming from somewhere below, somewhere central. The walls pulsed with it. The flowers swayed in time. The heart, Kale said, already moving. It's calling. The heart of the palace was a chamber we hadn't found yet. Couldn't find until it wanted to be found. We followed the pulse down corridors that rearranged themselves, through doors that appeared and disappeared, until we stood before an entrance of living crystal that pulsed with golden light. This is the second trial, Kale said quietly. His hand found mine, squeezed. The curse requires witnesses, acknowledgement of truth. This one, he stared at that pulsing door. This one demands the truth from you. What kind of truth? Your heart, your intention. Whether you're here for him, he gestured to himself, or for glory, discovery, the kind of truth that magic can taste. His jaw tightened. It will hurt, Elara, and I cannot go with you. This trial is yours alone. Fear spiked through me. What happens if I fail? You won't. He said it with absolute certainty. But if you do, the curse remains unbroken. And you'll be marked by the palace as someone who lied to its king. It won't kill you, but it won't let you stay either. I squared my shoulders. Then I'd better not fail. The crystal door opened at my touch. Beyond it, light. Pure, golden, overwhelming light that made my eyes water. I stepped through. The heart was a sphere. That's the only way I can describe it. A perfect sphere of golden magic suspended in the center of a round chamber, pulsing like something alive. Veins of power spread from it into the walls, the floor, the ceiling, feeding the whole palace, keeping it alive despite the curse. I took 3 steps toward it, and the pain hit. Not physical. Worse. It felt like the magic reached inside me and grabbed every doubt, every fear, every selfish thought I'd ever had, and dragged them into the light. Why are you here? The voice was everywhere and nowhere. Female, male, neither, both. I'm here to break the curse, I gasped. Liar. The words slammed into me. Images flooded my mind me at university, desperate for recognition. Me finding the manuscript, imagining the accolades, the tenure, the respect. Me climbing that mountain thinking of discovery, of being the one who proved the legends real. That's not. You came for glory, for your name in history books, for proof that you were right and they were wrong. Tears streamed down my face. Yes, at first, but... And now? The magic tightened around my heart, squeezed. Now I'm here for him, I choked out. For Cale. Because he's been alone for 300 years and no one should suffer like that. Because when he looks at me, I feel seen for the first time in my life. Because I'm falling in love with him and it terrifies me, but I don't care. He could destroy you. I know. His love killed the last woman who held his heart. I'm not her. And I'm choosing this with my eyes open. Why? The question stripped me bare. Made me face the truth I'd been dancing around since I touched that frozen face and felt recognition slam through me. Because I've spent my whole life searching for something that felt real, I whispered. And he's the most real thing I've ever found. Because his pain calls to something in me that wants to heal it. Because when he smiles, really smiles, it feels like the sun breaking through clouds. Because I'd rather risk everything for one honest moment with him than live a safe, empty life pretending I never found him. The magic pulsed. Once, twice, then released. I collapsed, gasping. The golden light gentled, became almost warm, and on my wrist a mark, delicate lines of gold spreading like vines, forming a pattern I didn't recognize but felt ancient. The door burst open. Cale filled the entrance, his eyes wild, his control clearly shredded. I felt you were in pain. I'm okay. I held up my marked wrist. I passed. He crossed to me in 3 strides, pulled me against his chest so hard I felt his heart hammering. Never again, he growled into my hair. I don't care what the trials demand. I'm not letting you face them alone. Cale, no. The curse can kill me before I watch you suffer and do nothing. I pulled back enough to see his face. Hey, I'm here. I'm fine. And we're one step closer. But his eyes were still wild. Still wolf. When I felt your pain through the bond... He stopped. Blinked. Through the bond, we stared at each other. That shouldn't be possible, I breathed. I'm human, unbonded. We haven't... I know. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. But I felt you. Clear as day. Your fear, your pain, your determination. His voice dropped. Your truth. The implication settled between us, massive and undeniable. The curse is breaking, I said, piece by piece, or something else is forming. His gaze dropped to the mark on my wrist, something the curse wasn't designed to account for. We had no time to analyze it further. The palace pulled us onward. The 3rd trial revealed itself that evening. The frozen marketplace. We found it beyond the palace proper, in what had once been the kingdom's heart. Hundreds of people, men, women, children frozen mid-motion, vendors hawking wares, children chasing each other, couples holding hands, all of them locked in ice, preserved in their last moment before the curse fell. Cale's people, his pack. He stood at the entrance, and I watched 3 centuries of grief crash over him. They don't know they're dead, he said softly. The curse froze time for them mid-breath. They've been waiting here, aware on some level, unable to move or speak or understand. His voice cracked, waiting for their king to save them. In the center of the marketplace stood a statue. Not frozen people, actual carved stone. 2 figures. Cale, younger, fierce, crowned, and beside him, a woman whose beauty was cold and sharp. Morgana. The truth trial, I realized. You have to confess. Here, to them. He nodded. Didn't move. Cale, how do I tell them I failed them? He turned to me, and I'd never seen him look so broken. That my pride, my inability to let go, cost them everything? These people trusted me, followed me, believed I would keep them safe. And You loved. I took his hand. That's not a crime. It is when hundreds pay the price. I had no answer for that. No comfort that wouldn't ring hollow. He walked into the marketplace alone. I watched from the edge as he moved through his frozen people, touching faces gently, murmuring names I couldn't hear. He stopped at a young girl, maybe 7, frozen mid-laugh and his shoulders shook. When he reached the statue, he dropped to his knees. I failed you. His voice rang through the marketplace, clear and devastating. I am Kale, son of Aldrich, your alpha and king, and I failed you. I loved a human woman knowing it was forbidden. I claimed her knowing the risk, and when the price came due, I was too proud to pay it, too stubborn to let her go, too convinced that my love was worth more than your lives. Magic shimmered in the air, responding, listening. Morgana offered me a choice, he continued. Release Celine or watch my kingdom fall. I chose neither. I fought. I raged. I tried to find another way. And while I wasted time on my pride, the curse fell. You were frozen. The kingdom fell. Everything died. His hands fisted against his thighs. Because I couldn't accept that some things, some people aren't meant to be kept. A tear traced down his face. Then another. Where they hit the ground, flowers bloomed. White roses. The color of mourning in his culture. I have no right to ask forgiveness, Kale said. No right to expect you to understand. But I swear to you, all of you, if these trials break this curse, if I can free you even in death, I will spend whatever time remains making this right. I will rebuild what I destroyed. I will carry your names, your stories, your memories. I will make sure no one forgets the Northern Pack or the kingdom that stood against the world and loved fiercely and paid the price. More tears, more flowers. The marketplace was becoming a garden, white blooms spreading like snow. The statue cracked, right down the center, splitting Kale from Morgana. The half bearing the witch's image crumbled to dust. The half bearing Kale remained, but changed. Older, humbler, still crowned but kneeling now. The frozen people didn't wake, but the ice around them began to glow soft, gentle, and I felt it, the shift in the magic. They were being released, not to life, but to rest, to peace, to whatever came after. Kale collapsed forward, his forehead pressed to the ground, his whole body shaking with grief, 3 centuries old finally allowed to surface. I went to him, knelt beside him, said nothing because there were no words for this. He turned into me. This powerful alpha king, this man who'd survived alone for longer than I could fathom, buried his face in my shoulder and broke. I held him while he shattered. While the marketplace transformed around us into a memorial garden, while his people's ice became light and faded into something that felt like forgiveness or at least release, I witnessed him, all of him. The grief, the guilt, the devastating weight of being the one who survived, and I loved him more for it. When the tears finally stopped, he pulled back. His eyes were red, his face ravaged, and he'd never looked more beautiful. You stayed, he said hoarsely. Always, I promised. The 4th trial found us the next day. The chapel of the spring goddess, hidden in the valley, accessible only by a path that appeared at dawn. The structure was ancient, predating even Kale's kingdom, built by the people who'd first settled these mountains. The door opened for me, only me. Inside, mosaics, covering every surface, telling a story in images so vivid they seemed alive. A goddess descending to earth, her children, blessed with her blood, generations spreading across the land. And at the end, a girl, dark-haired, determined, standing before a frozen king. Me. No, I breathed. But the prophecy was clear, written in the old language beneath the final mosaic. When the last daughter of the spring goddess finds the forgotten king, when she chooses him freely and loves him truly, the curse will break and the balance restore. Divine blood. I had divine blood. The revelation should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt like a trap. I stumbled out of the chapel to find Kale waiting. He took one look at my face and knew. What did you learn? I told him, watched his expression shudder with every word. Divine blood, he repeated flatly. You're not human. I'm human. Mostly. There's just apparently my bloodline traces back to... I gestured helplessly. The prophecy. He stepped back. Away from me. This entire time, you being here, finding me, breaking the seals, it wasn't choice. It was destiny. That's not... You said you chose me, but you didn't, did you? His voice turned bitter. The goddess chose for you, sent you here like a key to a lock. And I... He laughed, sharp and ugly. I let myself believe someone could want me for myself, not because some ancient magic demanded it. Anger flared hot in my chest. Are you serious right now? Am I wrong? Yes, I shouted. You're completely wrong. I didn't know about any prophecy when I climbed that mountain. Didn't know about divine blood or goddess daughters, or any of it when I touched your face. I made choices, Kale, every step of the way. And maybe there's some cosmic design pointing me toward you, but so what? He stared at me. I still chose to stay when I could have left, I continued fiercely. I still chose to face those trials. I still chose to fall in love with you, even knowing the risk. Destiny might have set the stage, but I'm the one acting on it. Me, my choice, my heart. Elara. No, you don't get to pull away now because you're scared. I stepped into his space, refusing to let him retreat. I see you, Kale. All of you. The king, the wolf, the man who's been alone so long he forgot what it feels like to be chosen. Well, I'm choosing you. Not because some goddess told me to. Because you're brave and broken and kind and fierce, and you make me want to be braver than I am. His control was fracturing. I could see it in his eyes, the wolf rising, the need barely contained. You deserve better than a cursed king, he growled. I deserve exactly what I want. And I want you. I could hurt you, claim you too hard, burn you out like... I grabbed his face, forced him to look at me. I am not her. Stop comparing me to ghosts. I'm here. I'm real. And I'm telling you I love you. Something in him snapped. He kissed me like the world was ending. Like I was air and he'd been suffocating. His hands were everywhere. My face, my hair, my waist pulling me closer, closer, like he could somehow absorb me into his skin. I kissed him back with everything I had. All the love, all the fear, all the desperate certainty that this man, this impossible, infuriating, devastating man was mine, and I was his, and no curse or prophecy could change it. Magic exploded around us. Gold and white and green, spiraling upward from where we stood locked together. The chapel lit up like a star. The ground beneath us bloomed thousands of flowers erupting simultaneously, their petals glowing. Kale's chest split with light. He gasped against my mouth, pulled back. We both looked down to see the mark, a twin to mine, vines of gold spreading across his heart. The bond, forming, real. Elara, he breathed. This is if we complete this. There's no going back. Good, I said, and kissed him again. The palace shuddered. Not a tremor, a full-body convulsion, like something was trying to tear itself free from the foundations. The flowers around us, those glowing, impossible blooms that had witnessed our kiss, withered. Petals turned black and fell like ash. The golden light in the chapel flickered, died, plunging us into darkness broken only by the sick green glow seeping through the cracks in the walls. Kale's arms tightened around me, protective. His eyes had gone full wolf, gold bleeding into white, pupils dilated. No, he growled. Not yet. We're not ready. Ready for what? He didn't answer, just pulled me behind him as the temperature dropped 20 degrees in as many seconds. My breath came out as fog. Ice crept across the chapel floor in geometric patterns that looked almost deliberate, almost intelligent. The darkness coalesced. I've never believed in ghosts. Never put stock in stories about spirits or shades or the dead reaching back from whatever comes after. But I believe now. Because she appeared in front of us, crafted from shadows and malice and magic so old it made my teeth ache. Morgana, beautiful and terrible in equal measure, tall, wrapped in robes that moved like living smoke. Her face was sharp all angles, and cruelty with eyes that burned green and empty. Not alive, not dead, something trapped between. So, her voice was silk over razors. The forgotten king finally found his loophole. Kale positioned himself fully between us. You have no power here, Shade. The trials are nearly complete. Your curse is breaking. My curse? She laughed, and it sounded like screaming. Oh, my dear broken king. This was never just my curse. You wrote it with your choices. Your pride. Your inability to accept that some loves are poison no matter how sweet they taste. I've confessed my failures, Kale said, voice steady despite the fury rolling off him in waves. Faced my truth. The pack has been released. The trials are incomplete. Morgana drifted closer. The flowers in her path didn't just wither, they rotted, turning to black sludge. You've broken 4 seals, but the 5th and final requires something you've never been willing to give. Dread settled cold in my stomach. What? She smiled at me. Or the thing wearing her face smiled. Sacrifice, little goddess. Blood. The curse demands balance. A life for a life. A heart for a kingdom. Someone must die for the Alpha King to truly be free. No. Kale's voice dropped to something barely human. Absolutely not. Find another way. There is no other way. Morgana circled us, her form flickering like a candle flame. The curse was bound in blood and betrayal. It can only break through blood willingly given. One of you must choose death. Choose it freely, without coercion, without hope of resurrection. Her eyes fixed on me. So which will it be? Will you sacrifice yourself for a love barely weeks old? Or will he, she gestured to Kale, repeat his greatest sin and let another die in his place? The silence was deafening. When? I heard myself ask. My voice sounded distant, calm, like I was negotiating a research grant instead of discussing who gets to die. Ilara, nu, midnight tonight, Morgana said. In the throne room where this began. Come armed with your choice. 1 blade, 1 heart, 1 ending. She started to fade. I'll be waiting. She disappeared, taking the unnatural cold with her. The flowers stopped rotting, but they didn't recover. Just lay there, blackened and dead, a reminder of what was coming. Kale spun to face me. No. Whatever you're thinking, no. I wasn't thinking anything. Liar. He grabbed my shoulders. Not rough, but desperate. I can feel you through the bond. Your determination. Your absolutely insane willingness to... He cut himself off. Dragged in a breath. You're not dying for me. And you're not dying for me either. I shot back. So where does that leave us? I've lived 300 years, Alara. I've had my time. You have decades ahead, a whole life you haven't even started. If one of us has to... Don't. I pressed my fingers to his mouth. Don't you dare finish that sentence. Don't you dare try to make this noble. His eyes were wild, panicked. I'd never seen him like this, the unshakable Alpha King, completely undone. I just found you, he whispered against my fingers. After so long alone, after believing I'd never feel anything again, I can't lose you. I won't. Then we find another way. There is no other way. You heard her. Heard a bitter shade trying to twist the knife one last time. I dropped my hand from his mouth, cupped his face instead. Kale, think. Every trial so far has had a loophole, a solution that required us to see past the obvious. Why would this one be different? Because this is Morgana's final revenge. But I could see him thinking, the brilliant tactical mind that had made him a king engaging despite his fear. A choice between love and survival. Force me to either sacrifice myself and leave you grieving, or let you die and prove I haven't changed at all. Exactly. It's a trap. Which means we spring it together. His eyes sharpened. Neither of us chooses, or both of us do. A paradox, I breathed. The curse was built on absolutes, one or the other, black or white. But what if we refuse those terms? Hope flickered across his face, then died. It's risky. If we're wrong, if the curse interprets mutual refusal as a failed trial, we'll be trapped here forever. I know. I held his gaze. But I'd rather spend forever here with you than have one of us walk away alone. He kissed me, hard and desperate and achingly gentle all at once. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "You're terrifying," he murmured. "Absolutely terrifying. So you've mentioned." We spent the hours until midnight preparing. Not with weapons or elaborate plans, but with honesty. Cale told me about his childhood running wild through these mountains, learning to shift under his father's patient guidance. I told him about mine books instead of playmates, quiet instead of wild, always searching for something I couldn't name. We talked about the future we wanted, the kingdom we could rebuild, the research we could conduct together, his lived experience combined with my academic knowledge, the simple domestic dreams that felt revolutionary after everything we'd survived. "I want to see you in sunlight," he said quietly. We were in the library, surrounded by books, his arms around me as we sat on the floor. "Real sunlight. Outside these walls. I want to watch you discover new things and get excited about dead languages. I want to argue with you about proper measurement systems and lose every time." I smiled despite the weight of what was coming. "You won't always lose." "I will. You're stubborn. Takes one to know one." He pulled me closer. "If we survive this, when we survive this, he amended, "I'm going to court you properly, the way you deserve, not this rushed, intense, crisis-driven." "I like crisis-driven," I interrupted. "It's very us." His laugh rumbled through his chest into mine. "Still, I want to do this right. Give you choices, time, space to be sure." "I'm already sure." I twisted to look up at him. "Cale, I'm sure." The vulnerability in his eyes nearly broke me. Even knowing what I am, what I could become if I lose control, especially knowing that, because you've had 300 years to lose control and you haven't. Because you've been gentle with me when every instinct screams to claim and possess. Because you're strong enough to be afraid and still keep fighting. He kissed my temple, my cheek, the corner of my mouth. "I love you, Ilara. However this ends, I need you to know that. You brought me back to life, made me believe in possibility again. Whatever happens tonight, we face it together," I finished firmly. "No martyrs, no noble sacrifices. Together." "Together," he agreed. Midnight arrived like an execution. The throne room had transformed. No longer the beautiful space where I'd first seen him frozen. Now it was a cathedral of shadows and dying light. The flowers were gone, all of them, leaving just bare stone and the oppressive weight of ancient magic. Morgana's shade waited on the throne. Cale's throne. "How punctual," she purred. "Have you made your choice?" We walked forward hand in hand. I felt Cale's power rolling off him, barely contained. The wolf was close to the surface. I could see it in the way he moved, predatory and fluid, protective instincts on high alert. "We have," I said before he could speak. Her smile widened. "And?" I held up the dagger we'd brought, simple, ceremonial, sharp enough to do what needed doing. "We both choose sacrifice." Confusion flickered across her face. "That's not you must choose one." "No." Cale's voice was iron. "You said someone must choose death freely. You didn't specify it had to be only one person. We both choose to give our blood, our lives if necessary, but we do it together. That's not how this works." "Then change the terms." I stepped forward. Cale moved with me, our hands still linked. "You wanted to prove that alphas destroy what they love, that selfish love ruins everything, but we're choosing different. We're choosing each other over survival. Yes, but we're not making that choice alone. We're not forcing the other to live with the grief. We're sharing it, splitting the weight." Morgana's form flickered. Rage distorted her features. "You cannot rewrite a curse." "We're not rewriting it. We're fulfilling it exactly as stated." Cale's free hand came up, and I placed the dagger in his palm. "A life for a life. blood freely given, a choice made without coercion or hope of resurrection. You wanted sacrifice? You're getting it. From both of us. This is your cheating. We're being honest. I took the dagger from Kale, held it between us. True love isn't one person dying for the other. It's both people willing to bleed together, to face death together, to refuse the false choice between love and survival. The magic in the room churned, uncertain, like we'd introduced a variable it didn't know how to process. Midnight is here, Kale said. We're ready. Are you? Morgana's shade screamed. The sound was fury and defeat twisted together. Fine, spill your blood then. See if your precious paradox is enough. The floor cracked open. A circle of runes blazed to life around us, older than Morgana, older than the curse, old as the mountains themselves, the goddess's magic. Recognizing, responding, Kale took the dagger, cut his palm without hesitation, a quick, clean slice that welled immediately with blood. He held his hand over the circle, let crimson drops fall onto glowing runes. I, Kale, son of Aldrich, last alpha of the northern pack, freely give my blood, my life, my heart, for love, for her, for us. The runes flared white. He handed me the dagger. I met his eyes, those impossible gold eyes that had become my whole world, and smiled. I, Alara, daughter of the goddess, Line, freely give my blood, my life, my heart, for love, for him, for us. I cut my palm. The pain was sharp and bright. Blood welled, dripped, mixed with his on the ancient runes. The magic erupted. Not dark, not destructive. Pure white light exploded from the circle, from our joined hands, from our chests where the bond marks blazed gold and green. It shot upward, shattered the ceiling, kept going until it pierced the sky. Morgana's shade shrieked a sound of something being unmade and dissolved into nothing, not fading, erased. The curse that had held her shade here for 3 centuries simply let go. The palace shook. But this time it wasn't pain, it was release. Time snapped back into motion. The frozen kingdom beyond the palace walls stirred. And Kale, he gasped, fell to his knees, pulling me with him as his body convulsed. I held on, terrified, as light poured from him in waves. His back arched. He threw his head back and roared a sound that was wolf and man and something divine all at once. Bones cracked, shifted, reformed. His wolf. Finally. After 300 years, his wolf was free. The shift didn't complete. He held himself at the edge, caught between forms, partially shifted. Eyes pure molten gold, claws, fangs, power radiating from every pore. When he looked at me, I saw everything. The king, the wolf, the man. All of him, finally whole. Alara, he breathed. His voice was layered now, human and animal together. I can feel everything. I know. Because I could feel it too. The bond, fully formed and blazing between us. His joy, his relief, his overwhelming love crashing through me in waves that made me dizzy. The throne room transformed around us. Flowers, thousands of them, burst through stone. Not the dying blooms from before, but new growth, vibrant and alive, and reaching toward the shattered ceiling where stars were visible for the first time in centuries. The curse was broken, completely, finally, irrevocably. Kale pulled me against him, and we just held each other while the palace came alive around us, while his kingdom stirred from its long sleep, while 300 years of suffering finally came to an end. We did it, I whispered against his neck. Together, he agreed. His claws retracted slowly, his features shifting back to fully human, but I could still feel the wolf there, settled and content beneath his skin. My fierce, brilliant, impossible mate. Mate. The word settled into my bones like it had always belonged there. Yours, I confirmed. Always. He kissed me as the palace celebrated around us, as magic and life poured back into a kingdom that had been dead for centuries, as our blood mingled on the ancient runes and sealed a bond that no curse could ever break. And somewhere, I swear I felt it, the goddess, smiling. The wolves came first. At dawn, 3 days after the curse shattered, I woke to howling. Not threatening, celebratory, joyful. The kind of sound that speaks of reunion and recognition and home finally found after being lost too long. I sat up in our bed, in chambers we'd chosen together in the palace's restored east wing, to find Kale already at the window. Still shirtless, his back a canvas of muscle and old scars, he stood silhouetted against the rising sun with his head tilted, listening. "They're coming back," he said quietly, wonder threaded through his voice. "The descendants. The pack-born who scattered when the curse fell. They feel it, the alpha call. My call." He turned to me and his eyes were wet. "They're coming home." I went to him, wrapped my arms around him from behind and pressed my cheek to his spine. Through the bond, I felt his emotions' overwhelming relief tangled with fear. What if they blamed him? What if they rejected the king who'd failed them? "They're coming home to you," I murmured against his skin. "That's all the answer you need." By afternoon, the first family arrived. A woman in her 60s, wolf-lean and silver-haired, with eyes the same gold as Kale's. Behind her, children, grandchildren, 3 generations who'd kept the old ways alive in exile. She took one look at Kale standing on the palace steps and dropped to her knees. "My king," she breathed. "We felt you wake, felt the curse break, felt the alpha call singing in our blood after a lifetime of silence." Kale crossed to her in 3 strides, pulled her to her feet. "No kneeling, Sarah. Not for me. Not after what I cost you. You cost us nothing we wouldn't pay again." Her eyes were fierce. "You loved my king. Deeply. Completely. The way alphas are meant to love. That the world couldn't handle it doesn't make it wrong." More came. Dozens by nightfall. Hundreds within the week. Pack-born from across the continent, drawn by the alpha call that had been silent for over 3 centuries. They brought children who'd never shifted, mates who'd never seen the kingdom, stories passed down through generations about the king who'd been frozen in time. They brought hope. And they brought questions, concerns, the practical realities of rebuilding a kingdom that existed outside modern borders, that had no legal standing in the current world, that was populated by people most humans thought were myths. That's where I came in. Turned out being a historian with a stubborn streak and a talent for bureaucratic warfare was exactly what a newly awakened magical kingdom needed. While Kale handled pack politics and re-established the alpha hierarchy, I navigated the nightmare of modern government. We worked side by side, always. The council meetings were exercises in controlled chaos. Pack elders who remembered the old ways arguing with younger wolves who'd grown up in the human world. Debates about borders, about secrecy versus integration, about how to protect their people while engaging with a world that had moved on without them. And through it all, Kale led. Not with the pride that had destroyed him before, but with humility earned through suffering. He listened more than he spoke, consulted rather than commanded, built consensus instead of demanding obedience. But he was still an alpha, still a king, and when he made a decision, it was final. I learned to read him in those meetings, the subtle shift in his posture when someone's argument swayed him, the way his fingers would tap against the table when he was holding back a growl, the look he'd give me across the council chamber, quick, private, asking for my opinion without words, and the touches, always the touches, his hand at the small of my back when we entered a room, his fingers brushing mine under the table during tense negotiations, the way he'd lean into my space when I spoke, a silent signal to everyone present that my words carried his authority. It drove the old guard pack members crazy at first. An alpha king taking counsel from his human mate, letting her speak in council, treating her as an equal. Kale shut that down fast. "Alara is my mate," he'd said during one particularly contentious meeting. His voice had been quiet, deadly. "My partner, my equal in all things. She broke the curse that none of you could. She faced trials that would have destroyed most wolves. She rules beside me not by my permission, but by right of conquest and courage. Anyone who has a problem with that, his eyes had gone full wolf, is welcome to challenge either of us. I promise you won't enjoy the outcome. No one challenged. We rebuilt slowly, carefully. The palace became a home again, not a museum, but a living space filled with voices and laughter, and the organized chaos of a pack finding its footing. We changed laws, the old prohibitions against human mates gone, replaced with protections, guidelines, support systems to help mixed bonds survive and thrive. Education about the risks, yes, but not bans. Never again bans. Love shouldn't be forbidden, Cale had said when he signed the new code into law. It should be protected, honored, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. I built a university. Or rather, we built it together. A place where wolf-born and human scholars could study side by side, where the old magic could be documented and preserved, where curious minds could chase impossible questions without judgment. It became my life's work. Training new historians, uncovering lost knowledge, bridging the gap between the magical and mundane worlds. Cale would visit between council sessions, settling into my office like he belonged there, which he did, and argue good-naturedly about my classification systems. You can't categorize transformation magic under biological processes, he'd insisted one afternoon, lounging in the chair across from my desk while I cataloged new acquisitions. It's spiritual, connected to the soul. It's both, I'd countered, not looking up from my notes. The spirit guides the change, but the body executes it, therefore biological. You're impossible. You love it. Unfortunately, but he was smiling when he said it. The children came later. Not immediately, we needed time. Needed to be sure my body could handle an alpha bond long term. The goddess blood helped. Made me stronger, more resilient than a regular human. But we were careful. Cautious. When I finally told him I was pregnant, Cale had gone absolutely still. You're sure? His hand had hovered over my still flat stomach. The healers confirmed. Twins, I'd said, laughing at his expression. And before you panic, they're healthy. I'm healthy. Everything is exactly as it should be. He dropped to his knees, pressed his forehead to my belly, and cried. Our daughter was born first, dark-haired like me, but with her father's gold eyes. She came out screaming loud and furious and absolutely convinced the world should bend to her will. That's my girl, Cale had murmured, cradling her with hands that could crush stone but held her like spun glass. Our son followed 20 minutes later, quieter, calmer, with my eyes but his father's stubborn jaw. They're perfect, I'd whispered, exhausted and overwhelmed and so full of love I thought I might burst. They're ours, Cale had agreed. Watching the alpha king of the northern wolves navigate fatherhood was perhaps the greatest gift of my life. He was fierce and protective and absolutely terrified he'd mess it up. He read every book I gave him on child development, consulted pack elders about wolf-born children, made lists of things that could go wrong and contingency plans for each. And then our daughter shifted for the first time at age 3, too young, too early, too uncontrolled, and all his careful planning went out the window. He'd shifted with her, stayed wolf while she panicked in her new form, showed her through example and patience, and the bond that hummed between alpha and pack that she was safe, that she was loved. That being wolf was a gift, not a curse. I'd found them hours later, both curled up in wolf form in front of the fireplace. Our daughter tiny and perfect with her dark fur tucked against her father's massive side, while he watched her sleep with one eye open. He'd looked up when I entered, and the love in those wolf eyes had stolen my breath. Our family, his expression said, worth everything. The years passed like water through fingers, beautiful and impossible and so achingly normal despite the magic threaded through our lives. There were hard moments, pack members we lost to old age or conflict, political battles that kept us up nights strategizing, moments when the weight of ruling felt too heavy, and we'd retreat to our chambers just to remember why we were fighting. But there was laughter too. So much laughter. Like the time our son, 8 years old and convinced he knew everything, had challenged his father to a race. Wolf form, full sprint through the valley. Kale had let him win, obviously. But watching my dignified, powerful alpha king deliberately trip over his own paws while our son crowed in victory had been worth every ounce of royal dignity sacrificed. Or the great bedtime story debate of our daughter's 5th year, when she demanded real stories, not baby stuff. The tale of the first shift is perfectly appropriate, Kale had argued. It's about a wolf who eats 3 hunters, I'd countered. They were bad hunters, who threatened the pack. She's 5, Kale, old enough to understand justice. We'd compromised. He told her the story but changed the ending so the hunters learned their lesson and apologized. She'd seen right through it. Papa made it soft, she'd informed me the next morning. I liked his first version better. She was her father's daughter through and through. Our son took after me, bookish, curious, more comfortable with scrolls than sparring. It worried some of the pack elders. An alpha's son should be a warrior, they muttered. Kale had shut that down with characteristic bluntness. My son will be whatever he chooses to be, he'd declared. Warrior, scholar, artist, explorer. I don't care. He'll be free to find his own path. That's what we fought for. That's what the curse taught us. Love doesn't demand conformity. It celebrates choice. Our son had become a healer, combining wolf magic with human medicine, creating new techniques that helped both populations. He was brilliant, compassionate, everything a king could want in an heir, even if he healed instead of fought. Our daughter became the warrior, fierce and strategic and absolutely ruthless when protecting her own. She led the palace guard by 20, and had half the young wolves in the kingdom either terrified of her or desperately in love with her. She's going to give us gray hair, I'd told Kale one evening, watching her drill the guards with an intensity that would have made a general weep. Too late. He gestured to his temples where silver was starting to thread through the black. Though I think most of this is from council meetings, not the children. Liar. You love council meetings. I love arguing with you during council meetings. There's a difference. Time moved differently after the curse broke. Not magically, just the way it does when you're happy. Days blur into weeks, into years, into decades. And suddenly you look up and realize half a century has passed, and your children have children, and the world has changed in ways both beautiful and strange. The bond sustained me. Kept my human body strong far longer than it should have been. The goddess blood helped, yes, but it was Kale's love, constant and fierce and freely given, that truly kept me alive. We grew old together. His hair went silver, then white. Mine followed. The lines on our faces deepened his from laughter more than the grief that had carved them originally. Mine from smiling at him across council chambers and dinner tables and our bed for 57 years. His body stayed strong. Alpha vitality meant he aged slower than me. But he aged. The immortality the curse had forced on him was gone, replaced by a normal lifetime. Long by wolf standards, yes, but mortal. Finite, precious. We knew it was coming. I felt it first, my body finally, gently starting to fail. Nothing dramatic, just tired. So tired. The healers said months. Maybe a year if I was lucky. Kale had taken the news in silence, then carried me to our chambers, held me while I cried, and whispered promises against my hair. Together, he'd said. However, this ends together. I'm not surviving you, Alara. I won't. The pack needs. Our children can lead. They're ready. They've been ready for years. His arms had tightened. But I'm not spending another century without you. Never again. It should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like relief. On our last day, he carried me to the throne room. It had become a garden over the years. We'd never bothered to clear the flowers that had bloomed when the curse broke. Instead, we'd let them grow wild and free, turning the formal space into something alive and beautiful. Trees grew through the floor, their branches spreading across vaulted ceilings. Flowers bloomed in impossible colors. Water trickled from fountains that had once been frozen. Kale set me gently on the throne, his throne, the one I'd first seen him frozen on a lifetime ago. Fitting, I murmured. that we end where we began. This isn't an ending. He knelt in front of me, took my hands in his. They were wrinkled now, mine, spotted with age, but his grip was still strong, still sure. It's a transformation. Our children were there, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. The pack had gathered hundreds of them, 3 generations strong, all silent, all waiting. Cale looked at me with those eyes that had first opened in ice and locked onto mine with recognition older than memory. "You remembered me when the world forgot," he said softly, loud enough for only me to hear. "You climbed a mountain for a legend, faced trials that should have killed you, loved me when I was broken and cursed and convinced I was unlovable. You're very lovable," I whispered. My voice was weak now, fading, stubborn, protective, terrible at measurements, but lovable. He laughed, cried, both at once. "I spent 300 years alone," he continued, "and then 57 years learning what it means to be whole. You gave me that. You. My fierce, brilliant, impossible mate. My queen. My heart." I touched his face one last time, traced the lines I'd memorized over decades. Best discovery I ever made. Best footnote? Best everything. The bond between us pulsed, gold and green and achingly bright, and I felt it Cale's life force, deliberately, carefully, beautifully entwining with mine, slowing to match my failing rhythm. Our children understood. I saw our daughter step forward, her own mate's hand in hers, saw our son tears streaming down his healer's face nod his acceptance. This was our choice. One last time, together. "I love you," Cale whispered as my vision started to fade. "I love you," I answered. Our hearts stopped beating. Together. Exactly together. As one. The bond flared brilliant and blinding, then gently faded like stars at dawn. They said afterward that flowers bloomed across the entire valley. That snow fell even though it was summer soft and gentle and melting the moment it touched the ground. That wolves from across the kingdom howled their grief and their gratitude for the king and queen who'd taught them that love, true love, was worth every sacrifice. They buried us in the throne room garden, side by side, hand in hand even in death. And every year, on the anniversary of the day I broke the curse, flowers bloom on our graves regardless of the season. White roses for mourning, gold lilies for love, and deep purple midnight blooms that only grow in one place in all the world. The impossible palace where a stubborn historian found a frozen king and taught him how to live again. Where they learned together that some loves are strong enough to break curses, and some loves are eternal enough to last beyond death itself. The end. Thank you for listening to another emotional, magical shifter romance here on Tina Romance Library. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, so you never miss more powerful, heart-gripping romance stories.